Why do I need to be saved? The answer coming up. Hello everyone, this is David Sami and you are watching A Christian Journey. On this channel we talk about theology, philosophy, culture and everything that pertains to Christian life. So if these are things you are interested in, you may want to consider subscribing. Have you ever come across Christians that will tell you you need to be saved? I know I did. They would tell me, David, you need to be saved. And I would ask them, saved from what? For what? And they would say, well, if you want to go to heaven, you need to be saved. And the way you get saved is by believing on Jesus. Now that never made much sense to me, because they would use terminology I was unfamiliar with, and they wouldn't adequately explain what they meant and why do I need to be saved. Now today, we want to examine and explain the reasons behind the idea of needing to be saved. Now the word save or salvation has the general idea of to save, to rescue, to deliver or protect, or safety. Now the question is, what do we need to be rescued from? What do we need to be delivered from? Now the answer may surprise you, but we need to be delivered and rescued from God's judgment. You see, today, most of us, our views about God has been shaped by culture, not by the Bible. A God of justice and holiness is almost foreign to us. Now, if you are going to ask, we don't even think in those terms about God. And if you are going to ask an average person what God is like, they usually will probably say, well, God is a God of love. And that certainly is true. But He is also a God of justice, a God of righteousness, a God of holiness, a God who holds humanity accountable for their action. If you want to see that indeed He holds us accountable for our action, consider the following verses. In Book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 31, Apostle Paul tells the Greek philosophers that God has fixed a day on which He will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom He has appointed. In Romans 2:5, God says, because of your hard and unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath for yourself on the day of wrath, when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. You see, there is a day of wrath when God would hold humanity accountable for our actions. And in Hebrews 10:31 it says, it's a fearful thing to fall in the hands of living God. Now, most of us, we consider ourselves decent people. We try to do what is right. We don't harm anyone intentionally. And if we do something wrong, we usually have a good reason for it. And we all have some bad habits. And we all do some things that are not right. But after all, no one is perfect. Isn't that good enough to be a decent person for the Lord to accept us? You see, the problem is the way we judge ourselves is different than the way the Lord judges us. You see, we judge ourselves on a curve and in comparison with others. But if you want to know how the Lord judges us, consider these verses. Romans 2:6, it says, He will render to each one according to his works. Revelation 20:12, and I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were open, and the dead were judged by what was written in the books, according to what they have done. In Matthew 12:36, Jesus goes on to say, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. You see, in these 3 verses, we not only see that our deeds are recorded, but we also give an account for every careless words that we have spoken. Now, if you were to ask yourself, do you continually do what is right? Have you ever spoken carelessly? Do you measure up to your own standard of what is right and what is wrong, let alone God's? Now, I used to think the way God judges us is by our good deeds and bad deeds, that He will weigh out all the good things that we have done and all the bad things. And if our good deeds outweigh the bad, He then would forgive the bad and ushers us into heaven. But the thing is, that's not how God judges at all. He would hold us accountable for every action. Now, the goods that we have done, fine and good. But the bad, He will repay us for those things that we have done wrong. Those things will come under scrutiny. Even one sin will come under scrutiny. You see, in Romans 2:16, Paul goes on to say that God judges the secrets of men by Christ Jesus. Now, how do you think you will do if the actions that you conceal from others will come to light before God? You see, none of us are good enough to be declared not guilty on the day of God's judgment. That's why we need to be rescued, delivered, and be saved from that day, because nobody is righteous, not even one. In Romans 3:23 we read, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But the question is, how? How can we be rescued and delivered? And the logic behind the reason that we will be delivered. We're going to try to look at that next time. But until then, may the Lord be with you. May He watch over you. May He make His face to shine upon you and give you peace. This is David Sami with Christian Journey.